Hello everyone, this is My Two Cents and welcome back to my channel. I apologize, I know I have been away for quite some time. Unfortunately, I've not been home for a while now and haven't had the means to stream or make videos. But I'm back and hopefully going to be getting a lot more content out very shortly here. But there's something that's happened this past week that I just can't resist to talk about, and that is that Secretary of the Treasury Janet Yellen has finally outright admitted that the U.S. is committing fraud by taking on more debt. Now, for those of you who may not be aware, any talk of a debt ceiling at all is inherently fraudulent. The reason for that being, every U.S. dollar in existence is loaned into existence by the Federal Reserve with the expectation that it will be paid back with interest. If there's interest due on every dollar in existence, it means there's always more debt than there is money. So, in other words, there's never enough money in existence to pay back all the debt that exists. Therefore, unless more debt is taken out, you take on even more debt, there will be nothing to pay back the current debt, and therefore, any talk of a debt ceiling is ridiculous. The U.S. government will always have to take on more debt. And politicians that talk about, okay, this is the last time we're raising the debt ceiling are just blowing smoke. The government literally cannot keep running unless it keeps taking on more debt. However, I will say having a debt ceiling at least portrays the illusion that the government is at some point, in theory, going to stop taking on more debt and pay down its debts. Of course, we know that's not going to happen, but at least having one helps maintain the mirage that perhaps people can believe at some point in the future the government will stop taking on more debt. However, this week, Secretary of the Treasury Janet Yellen actually called for eliminating the debt limit altogether. It is more honest, but it's also an incredible admission on her part. So let's take a look at what the New York Times says here. Treasury Secretary Janet L. Yellen said on Thursday that the statutory debt limit should be abolished, arguing that the borrowing cap is, quote, destructive and poses unnecessary risks to the economy. She made the comments at a House Financial Services Committee hearing as the United States faces an October 18th deadline to raise or suspend the debt limit. Ms. Yellen warned on Thursday that failure to act would be catastrophic for the economy and said she supported proposed legislation to do away with the limit because it blocks the government from carrying out spending that Congress has authorized. I believe when Congress legislates expenditures and puts in place tax policy that determines taxes, those are the crucial decisions Congress is making, Ms. Yellen said. And if to finance those spending and tax decisions it is necessary to issue additional debt, I believe it is very destructive to put the President and myself as Treasury Secretary in a situation where we might be unable to pay the bills that result from those past decisions. Now, what is she saying there? Effectively, what Yellen is saying is if we have a debt limit, we run the risk of the U.S. government not being able to pay back its current debt obligations. Well, what does that mean? That means if the U.S. government doesn't borrow more, we won't be able to pay back what we've already borrowed. Now, stop and think about this for a minute. If this is anyone else in the world except the U.S. government, you as an individual take out a credit card and spend a bunch of money. And when the time comes that you need to pay, you take out another credit card and you pay off that previous credit card with your new credit card. And when the time comes to pay for the second credit card, you take out a third credit card. And so on and so forth. All the while, you're not working a job and you have no income. You're merely borrowing more money to pay off the previous debt. Now, this only works so long as there are people that are continuously willing to lend to you because they believe you're going to pay them back. But of course, once people catch on to what you're doing, they stop lending to you because they know you're not actually making any money. You're not going to be ultimately you're going to run out of people to borrow from, and you're not going to be able to pay anyone back, and the whole thing falls apart. I mean, that's what a Ponzi scheme is. When in a Ponzi scheme, which is a form of fraud, if the initial investors are simply being paid back from money that comes from new investors, the whole system is mathematically doomed to collapse because even if every person on the planet invests in the scheme, once there's no one left to borrow from, the whole thing falls apart. Now, and that is effectively what the U.S. is doing. The U.S. cannot, by definition, create wealth. All it can do is siphon wealth from its citizens through taxes or siphon wealth from its citizens through inflation by printing more money. But either way, the result is the same. If they steal more from their citizens have less money, and the economy shrinks. Sooner or later, people stop coming to work and stop producing because all their money is being taken by the government. Or if the government simply prints more money to fund its expenditures, inevitably inflation takes place, as is taking place now. And of course, people lose faith in the currency, they stop accepting it, and especially once foreign countries stop accepting it, there's no longer anything the government can do. The currency becomes worthless and falls into a collapse. Now, the fact that Janet Yellen is actually saying she wants to eliminate the debt limit is she's saying she wants to eliminate one of the last illusions put in place to make people believe that the government actually has the means to pay off its debt. If you outright admit by having a debt limit, the government's not going to be able to pay back its previous debts, you admit the government is merely borrowing money, is borrowing from new investors to pay back old investors, which is the very definition of a Ponzi scheme. It's a form of fraud. This only works so long as there are people left in the world that still want U.S. dollars and want to borrow. Well, in theory, of course, the U.S. government, when there's no one left to invest, they simply go to the Federal Reserve, have the Federal Reserve print more money and pay back the debt. But of course, that also means that the currency is going to inflate much, much faster, which means no one's going to want U.S. dollars. So how long is this going to continue? I don't know. I'm done trying to make predictions about when the U.S. dollar is going to collapse. I can only say that the longer they hold it off, the worse it's going to be when it happens. But this is just an extremely telling admission from Janet Yellen that the U.S. government is and always has been committing fraud. I don't know how long it's going to take for people to realize this, but I imagine with making public statements like this, it's getting much closer. So anyways, that's all I have to say on this topic. Stay tuned for more content coming out here shortly. And as always, that is my 2 cents. Take it for what it's worth.